Free Golden Eagles for War Thunder. You want them? Too bad, you can't have them. Golden Wagers were removed from the game 3 years ago. Thanks, Gaijin. Now, tank players, I need to have a serious talk with you. What makes you play this mode? Do you actually enjoy it? Because to me personally, it felt like the most unbalanced and poorly designed mode of them all. I understand the basic appeal of tanks, I really do. I played World of Tanks back in 2011, and while the game wasn't very good, it did give me this primal satisfaction of driving a tank and shooting other tanks. I admit, there is something about having a long barrel and penetrating each other that makes us boys interested, but after playing Tank RB for a while, I just became depressed. I didn't even want to launch the game to record footage. Let me explain why. Let us first examine the basic game design of Tank RB. When you're making a game, you want to come up with a foundation that you then use to balance everything you add later on. For example, if I were to make a tank game with planes, the baseline would be something like this. Light and medium tanks would be the workhorses of any team, mobile and versatile, but not strong enough to hold positions or take other classes head-on. Heavies would be their natural counter, lacking in mobility but powerful enough to force mediums out of positions. Tank destroyers would counter heavies with exceptional frontal armor and armament, but be in turn vulnerable to getting flanked by lights and mediums. Since none of these classes can do anything to aircraft, planes would have to be very limited. You would only get one opportunity to use them once the game is halfway done, to shake up the match and then go back to tank gameplay. Anti-air vehicles would be very cheap, disposable units that you only spawn when air threats are present, and then discard them once it is dealt with. With this kind of foundation, we give everyone a job to do and treat planes as a single-use airstrike. And you might even think this is how it works in War Thunder, but oh boy, War Thunder is very, very special. Tank RB balance is instead a hierarchy. On the very top you have planes. They are easily accessible, they counter everything, and even anti-air units often cannot do anything about them. The apex predators of Tank RB are planes. Think about that for a second. Next, you have tanks that possess both good armament and good speed. Because of tank map design, such vehicles can often destroy the whole enemy team and lock down their spawn 5 minutes into the game. And at the bottom, you have everything else. Tanks with weak armament and especially tanks that are slow. These exist only to get flanked, bombed, and spawn camped. No amount of armor or gun will save you from being shot in the side and then strafed by 3 planes at the same time. This creates a situation where some nations become near unplayable at certain BRs because of the lack of mobility in the tanks you have to play. I'm sure you know which ones I'm talking about. So that's vehicle balance. You either play fast tanks with good guns, or you suffer. No nuance and no in between. And the next aspect of Tank RB design is arguably even worse. To create a good gameplay loop, you also want to come up with interesting objectives that would motivate players to not just shoot each other, but also play in a more strategic manner. Now, I understand that Gaijin is incapable of this as I play Air RB, but good god. Tank RB objectives is the most uninspired, bland garbage I have ever seen in a video game. Capture points, really. Sometimes you have 3 points, sometimes 2, sometimes 1. Is that all you can think of? Or do you just not care? Would it really be so hard to just plagiarize something from other multiplayer games? Some kind of escort objective where you have to defend a group of AI units until they reach their destination, or a capture the flag ripoff where you would have to steal enemy supplies and bring them to your base. Or, if you absolutely have to stick to capture points, at least make them change their location every few minutes or so. Would it kill you to put some effort into making objectives interesting? Make them dynamic, encourage people to move around instead of rushing the same positions and sitting there until the end of the match. Give your game some flavor, will you? As it stands, Ground RB is insanely stale. Every game opens with fast tanks rushing power positions and annihilating everyone who dares to approach a point. Once it is clear that one team is losing, the winning team transitions into spawn camping, making sure that the losing team cannot make a comeback. Add some bombers into the mix and you get the picture. It's not pretty. In fact, it's horribly ugly. It's like watching a bad movie 100 times in a row, and it only gets worse every time. Maps change, the amount of objectives changes, but the gameplay stays the same. There is no variation whatsoever. Something tells me that they don't want to introduce more objective types, not just because of their laziness, but also because they think an average tank player is an idiot. Gaijin, listen to me. Some people are stupid, yes, But a lot of us can, in fact, think. We can see your shitty attitude towards the players. We can see what you're doing. So get your head out of your ass and improve your core game modes. We can handle more than just standing in circles until they're captured. Give us variety. Give us things to do. Focus on the gameplay instead of the premiums, or your game won't last that much longer. I wanted to also say a few things about the maps, but I actually think the current maps would work fine if the objectives were improved. This game has plenty of huge, full-sized maps, and those would be perfect for some kind of a dynamic objective. What isn't perfect, and will probably never be perfect, is the next aspect of tanks that I wanted to talk about. When discussing tank RB grind, you kind of have to compare it to the air RB grind. And to nobody's surprise, planes are much better in this regard. But the funny thing here is the fact that air grind is also far from perfect. It's not fast, it gets even slower once you get to jets, and the modifications can be very hit or miss. Some planes don't care much for upgrades, while others absolutely require them to function properly. It is very apparent when your engine is missing 300 horsepower and your gun shoots anywhere but straight in a BF-109. But as imperfect as it is, it's still leagues better than the horrible, terrible tank RB grind. No matter the rank, it always takes you a while to unlock the next vehicle. The modification grind is also quite bad, but at least it has somewhat improved after the review bombing. Now repair parts and fire extinguishers are much easier to unlock, and you get one for free from the get-go. At least now you don't have to jay out if your track gets shot or if you get set on fire when stock. Still, it is far from great. Whereas planes can usually kill enemies without upgrades, many tanks suffer from awful default shells. If your stock round is heat or APCR, all you can do is shoot enemies and watch as they laugh at your pathetic attempts to hurt them. If your good shell is a rank 4 upgrade, by the time you get it, you probably don't want to play this vehicle anymore. And considering you might have a full lineup of tanks that all have this problem, I wouldn't blame you for uninstalling War Thunder. In Air RB, if you're desperate enough, you can at least destroy ground targets to grind modules. But tank players don't have a way out. You have to fight other players with your cringe shell. The only way forward is to suffer. All this leads me to premium players. A lot of people buy one premium tank and go into games with just that one vehicle. Everybody hates them as they leave right after dying. But can you really blame them? If you have a premium tank, you only get boosted rewards when you play that particular thing. The game itself discourages you from bringing other vehicles with it. It only makes sense to play it, die and go next, maximizing the profits and minimizing the time spent. So in the end, you can hardly blame players for trying to avoid this god-awful grind by any means necessary. A lot more people would bring full lineups into games if the grind wasn't so shit. It is Gaijin's fault entirely for creating this situation in the first place. Then again, every single issue this game has is Gaijin's fault. And trust me, the amount of problems will only increase with time. They are not the kind of developer who fixes and improves their game on their own. They have to be forced. This is why you have to make your voice be heard. The issues I covered in this video is really just the tip of the iceberg, as if I tried to include all of them, you would have to watch a 5-hour-long documentary. I could talk about volumetric shells and how their introduction has only made the gameplay worse for everyone. I could talk about ghost shells, about how ATGMs are buggy, about many shell types being borderline useless, about spawn camping, about anything really. But you already know all of this, and I don't even like tanks. It is very unlikely that I go back to playing them unless I need footage for a video. But you, the viewer, you like tanks, right? So let me ask you the same questions again. What makes you play this mode? Do you actually enjoy it? Are you fine with it being in this state? If you are, then feel free to dislike this video and leave. Now, if you do want it to improve, then say it. I'm just one person. Gaijin doesn't give a shit about what I say in my silly little videos. But they do care about you, the player base, as you are the ones paying for everything. Gaijin is full of shit and very stubborn. They would never do anything good for this game unless you force their hand. And you already did once. So it is possible to do it again. If you want change, you have to voice your dissatisfaction. Do not be afraid of other players shutting you down. Those who think this game is in a good state right now are delusional. Me and you, we both want this game to improve, right? So let's make it happen. I've been playing War Thunder since 2014. With each passing year, I watched Gaijin become more and more focused on making money, instead of creating a good experience for the players, and I kept silent. But not anymore. I am making these videos to try and wake you up, to show you that the game can be improved, the problems can be fixed, we just need to force Gaijin to work on it, and that is my message. I would like to thank Florian and my good friend Hidora for believing in me enough to support me financially. You guys are the best, thank you. Next time I will be looking at yet another pain in the ass, but this time in ARRB. Until then, take care.